family. I'm glad to be back with you for another Soul Swami Live. I hope you have had a fantastic week. And since the last time we met on Tuesday, and I hope the start of this work week has been good for you. Okay, let me turn that down. Sound working good. Doo, 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 doo. If you're new here, this is Soul Swami Live, where we discuss all things healing in various formats, whether it be conversation, his videos, homework, live energy readings, just a space for us to be able to interact with like-minded individuals who are also on their own process of healing, and maybe create a space where we can discuss some things that we all share together. Right? You can catch us on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That is on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We actually brought Instagram back on today to see how that go. Instagram's giving me a problem. Sometimes iPhone can get on and Android can't, and my friends were telling me it was always an issue, so we took a break from Instagram for a while, but we'll see how that goes these next couple of times, or we'll leave it out. But for sure, you can definitely catch us on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. The beginning of every show, we generally do a energy reading, not energy reading, but some chakra cleansing or energy point cleansing. And this week we are on our third eye, which resides in your forehead. It is your intuition. If you are into color, the color for your third eye is indigo, which is kind of difficult for me to get, but you can see that's the hint of color that I'm going for in the background. If you are into light therapy, the element for your third eye, your intuition, is light. If you are into essential oils and aromatherapy, you want to think things like rosemary, cedarwood, patchouli is pretty good for your intuition. If you are into stones, you want to think amethyst, which I have a ton of this. This is my baby. This is my red amethyst, but you want to think amethyst. You want to think labradorite. Purple fluorite is pretty good, and sodalite is good. Your third eye is also outside of just your intuition. Hey, Liberty, hold on. I'm gonna talk to you. Outside of your intuition, your third eye is also good for your vision, being able to see your direction and your purpose pretty clearly, your perception, how you perceive things, and astral projection, which sounds all metaphysical, but it simply is those moments where you think back or forward and you can feel the pain or remember the smells and the joys and the laugh, or you can think about how it will be in the future. That's simple as astral project. Liberty, glad to have you back. Happy Tuesday. I know you took a little break, but the family missed you. And it's funny that you're back, because I was thinking about doing 444 today. So you on here, so we're going to do the breath exercise 444. So for our chakra point, we generally start with a bowl, some sound therapy to calm our spirits. Then we do some breath work today. As I was just saying, we're going to do 444. That is, you breathe in for 4 count, hold for 4 count, breathe out for 4 count. But all you have to do is just focus on your breathing. I will keep the count for you. And we normally do a visualization, but honestly, I haven't been really visualizing just in this space. So for this, we're in the light. If you can, put yourself in a purple light, an indigo light, something of that nature. You can project your own light in your visualization, but we're going to do the breath work. And with the breath work, we're going to do some affirmations. And then we're going to get started with this show. Yeah, I'm glad now you need to come get some work, because I know you need some now. You've been MIA on the lessons, and I know you've been going through your own thing. So come get some Reiki and get you some of that healing. When you have the time, say you're going to get your simmering serious. What does that mean? I'm lost. The simmering serious. Is that English? No, I'm just kidding. All right, here we go. We're gonna start with the sound bowl. Simmering serious is pretty good too. Okay, hold on. Okay, I did say I want to start adding a little sound effects to our meditation part, so we're gonna do rain and train. Tell me what you think, Libby, since you out there. And when I change scenes, remind me to cut that stuff off. So, so true too. I guess you might have been gone for a while. That music I was playing in the beginning, that's one of the things that I made. I made a new beat too that I really do like, but I don't know how I want to bring in the bass line or the trumpet all together. It sounds fantastic. As a matter of fact, I might play it for you. But all together it sounds fantastic. But anyway, adding a little sound effect to it, to the breathing. Let's see how we do. Okay, well, I'll take a side note for you, and I'll play the songs. Well, you must be communicating well. The bowl is on fire. Well, I did a little Ricky this weekend too. And they were able to do some communicating as well. So the energy for being able to speak your truth and speak it with confidence is in the air. So next we're gonna do breathing exercise again. That is just 4-4-4. You breathe in 4-4 count. You hold your breath 4-4 count, and you breathe out 4-4 count. All you have to do is just focus in on your breathing and listen to the sound of my voice as I will keep the count for you. So on the count of 3, family, we'll start. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. One more time for me. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. I messed up the count, family. Alright, one more time. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Last time, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. And for our affirmations, I just want you to take a deep breath and then repeat the affirmation after me. So take a deep breath. trust my intuition and release. Take a deep breath. My imagination is powerful, and release. Take a deep breath. I think clearly, and release. Take a deep breath. My third eye sees all, and release. I trust my intuition. My imagination is powerful. I think clearly, and my third eye sees all. Okay, Liberty. Now I'm about to side note it. So here you go. This my theme music, and it's original. And I'm doing this for it. I'm doing this. It kind of ties into the show. It's something somebody said to me over the weekend that I never really thought about. So. Okay, so now you hear it's looping. Okay, good. I didn't even realize that you were showing up on the screen. You on Twitch. Thank you. Tatiana's supposed to be somewhere watching, but she be acting nervous. Don't put that in the comments. Okay. Hold on. Do. C. Save changes. Now I want you to hear. This the one I say I'm working on, and I don't know how I want it all to play. Back on track. Thanks for the sidetrack. Liberty, I appreciate you. But the funny thing about that is the first thing I want to talk about. It's ironic about what I just did for you. Like I said, I did some Reiki this weekend, and a friend of mine hadn't heard the ukulele song. They hadn't heard the beats. They hadn't heard a couple of things, the instruments, and they seen the puzzles and things like that. And then while I was showing it to them, They give me a compliment, and they use the word that I never really made the connection or identified that that's what I was doing. And they said, "It's good you got hobbies." And I laughed. I was like, "Hobbies?" And I realized hobbies is one of those words that I probably need to make a new relationship or reshape my relationship with. Because for the longest, hobbies always seem like something that someone else does, not what I do. Like Liberty, I know you do crocheting, and that seems like a hobby. You know what I mean? It just seems like something you. Hey, listen, that distracted me. That so I have a TV as my screen. So sometimes you'll see me look off to the side, and that text message came through, and I happened to be looking off to the side, and I read it. So I moisturized today. Gratitude. You made me distracted. I was supposed to talk about. Yeah. And the funny thing is, you love a hobby, and you probably call it a hobby, but I never really thought it as hobby. I just thought it as things I do. Just randomly. And the funny thing now is, I always in this process of healing. One of the things you do want to do is get you some hobbies, right? And I never really recognized that was something I was doing in my own process. Like, I just figured I was picking up a couple of new things and learning more about myself and just doing things that I like. And it wasn't until someone said that it's good that you have hobbies that I realized I'm like, man, in this time I've actually created some hobbies. Okay, so I messed up with my puzzle thing since you're talking about you dabbled in puzzles a little bit. Hey Sherry, you know what? Forgive me, because I definitely needed to reach out to you and see how school going. You know what I mean? But thanks for stopping by. So the puzzles I got lately have been 3D puzzles, which is interesting. And I messed up because I know I'm a big brain. So when I tried to do puzzles again, I went and got like the thousand puzzle piece. And when I went to put that together, I was like, I need to work my way up to thousand. So I will. Um tomorrow is a loose day. We in a weird space in our contract, so I'll probably check with you tomorrow evening. Um, I'm supposed to work with Kat, one of the Soul Family, on her show on TikTok, so I might be on TikTok tomorrow at some point. It's gonna happen soon, so I don't know if it's this week or next week, but um, just to kind of talk about the healing process, and right. So yeah, so we're gonna do a little work on TikTok. Um yeah, so I got that list and I still got that puzzle with them thousand pieces, and none of it's done. So I wound up being in Ollie's. And if you're not from around, I don't know where else Ollie's is. It is, I don't know. It just kind of showed up in North Carolina, but it is a discount store like Big Lots. Well, more like what Big Lots used to be, but Ollie's getting a little expensive anyway. So I got me a couple of 3D puzzles out of there. So I said I was gonna go live and put the Iron Man head puzzle together. So we might do that one day this weekend. Well, this weekend is supposed to be camping. Family, if you want to go camping, we having a tribe out. I will post the flyer on my social media maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But if you want to go camping, it's $45. It's pretty much safe. Bring your own tent. Um, if you don't have a tent, there'll be space. They'll have tents out there too. So if you never had experience camping, then and you want to, Come on, check the tribe out. They say they're gonna have a drum circle and hop a circle. Yup, at Rec Spot. Yes. And you know I hadn't been since that first time. I skipped last year, and I've been skipping. They've been going camping out there a bunch. I just been skipping it. But I plan on being out there this Saturday. So do. Make a plan. Come visit. Come camping. Do that with you. But anyway, as I was thinking about hobbies, right? It's just an interesting thing, and I guess the purpose of even saying that story is I'm glad I was in a space to be able to receive that, because for the longest I never made that connection. And I say this as you in your own process, you really do got to put yourself in a space of receiving, which can be difficult for a lot of us because especially if you've been a giver, putting yourself in a space of receiving is something that's going to take practice and intentional practice at that, and really allowing yourself to be able to hear things and process things and take things in, and as I've been saying lately, eat the meat and spit out the bones. Do 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 do. You got me side note. I'm still thinking about camping too, but I need to put it up. As a matter of fact, that's the first place I tried Hoppe, so they're gonna do Hoppe again too. So if you never had Hoppe, do your own research. But essentially, it is a plant medicine, a ceremonial plant medicine that helps create some mental clarity and does some other stuff. But it isn't a drug at all, so it doesn't get you high. It is all natural. So come on out there and get you some hoppe. Well, I forgot you done had hoppe a bunch. Sherry, you ain't got no. You know what? You need to tell Sherry come get her hand, get some Reiki too. Sherry, you need to come get some Reiki. Put some hands on you. Then you can try some hoppe too. So I ain't know if I really want to talk about this, but I kind of do, because it's kind of been showing up somewhat as a theme. And I really do understand the purpose and the idea of it, but I had to do some math, do some real thinking within myself. And it's around this statement or this idea of I'm okay if it doesn't happen, right? So give you context, that's like when you have a goal or something you want for yourself, but then you also understand that it may not happen. And you understand that it may not happen, so you prepare yourself for that possibility, and you become comfortable with the idea of I'm okay if it doesn't happen. Now, the thing about it, with it, every time I hear this, I've been hearing it a lot lately, especially as it relates to the goals or visions people have for their love life or their family life, which is very interesting. Because most people, I haven't really heard it in career, because people establish a goal with a career, they work hard for that. And I generally don't hear people say, well, if it doesn't happen in my career, I'll be okay. You know what I mean? They work towards that, and then they accept that if it happens. But whenever I would hear that saying, it would always make me feel some kind of way. And I'd want to put my cape on and immediately jump in and try to help and add perspective or shape and reshape this idea of I'm okay if it doesn't happen. And I really had to spend some time with myself and figure out, why does it make me feel like that? Why does it make me feel like I need to do something? And I think what helped me be able to recognize the emotion that it created with me is when a friend said it to me. And the thing about it is, I think I interpret that statement as one of the things that we've cautioned each other about And that is in our healing process, taking our healing process as a way to opt out of our own lives. And I think when I hear that, I internalize that statement as saying, I'm really not willing, even though I may have this dream, I'm only willing to do so much to get that dream. So if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. And I recognize one of the reasons why I jump into action or feel like I need to say or do something is that I recognize that it really makes me feel sad of all the emotions I feel, because what I hear is a person that has given up on their dreams. And what I recognize is giving up on your dreams has become so second nature to us that we think it's normal, and we thinking we're doing a good thing by not setting ourselves up with false hopes, not setting ourselves up with false expectations. But those hopes and expectations do become the roadmap to how we achieve those dreams. So it is okay to understand that all your dreams may not come true. But it is not okay to opt out of your life and not be willing to do the things necessary to achieve those dreams. Because if you give up on your own dreams, who is there to achieve them for you? Right? So I just had to take a little side minute and talk about that a little bit. And then this other idea came up of shame. And I was having a conversation in my Reiki session over the weekend. The word shame came up, right? And the person said something to me that I felt was very interesting. And when they spoke of shame, they spoke of it from their perspective and in a way that they thought I didn't experience shame. And the reason I want to talk a little bit about shame is because that is one of the emotions that, one, I've allowed myself to feel. And for people to not be able to recognize that I've experienced shame only shows that how much I've suppressed my emotions or suppressed my feelings. But the other thing about shame is, on this process of healing, as your truths are being revealed to you and other truths are being revealed to you, that feeling of shame will show up. And I think sometimes when we talk about the healing process, we talk about all the good things that come once we reach the end of that. But I do think that we leave out some of the painful things that come along with the healing process. And shame is one of those painful emotions that you will have to learn to navigate as you become the healed version of yourself, right? So shame will show up as you think about some of the things that you've done in a mindset that you didn't even really realize that you had. For example, once you recognize that some of the choices and decisions you make were based on a survival mindset, you may experience a little shame for that. Shame also shows up when you begin to think about some of the behaviors that you exhibited, your interactions with people in the world around you, and some of the things you did from your lack of not knowing will make you feel shameful. And that is okay, because on this process, another word that showed up in the healing in my Reiki session was permission. On this process, we give ourselves permission to feel all the emotions. And we understand now that shame is part of the emotions, but we have developed tools and are developing tools that helps us to navigate away from that emotion into other emotions. That helps us move from the dark, the shame we feel, to the light, the understanding we've learned. Right? So shame is a part of this process. When you begin to experience that, that is that threshold that we talked about. That there is no healing without pain. The pain is what hurt you, but then there's also the pain of healing, right? So shame will come along with that. We all experience that, and it's okay when you begin to feel those emotions. That's just a sign that you're healing and your truth is being revealed to you, and things are a little clearer. So Liberty, I appreciate you. I know you had to take a little break to get the baby together. Something else I wanted to talk a little bit about as well is we started talking about this idea of confidence and esteem, right? And I think people have a clearer idea of confidence. So I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of esteem. And essentially, esteem, is how much you like yourself, how much you respect yourself, and most importantly, how much you accept yourself. And that's flaws and all, right? And the most important thing about esteem that we want to really, really shine the light on is that our esteem, what we're willing to, how we feel about ourselves, how we respect ourselves, how we accept ourselves, our esteem is rooted in our identity. It is rooted in who we are and not necessarily what we do. And on this healing process, one of the things that we want to do is bring into alignment that idea of who we are and what we do match. We want to make sure our esteem is at a way that we accept ourselves, we respect ourselves, and we accept ourselves. As we talked about the conversation a couple of weeks ago on this idea of perfection, I had somebody tell me, "You're not perfect." And it was so funny to hear because I have accepted that about myself. It's a truth about me. So when somebody finds an imperfection in me, that's okay, because I already know I'm imperfect. So my esteem, when it comes to my ideas of perfection, is okay. Because even if I make a mistake, I understand that I'm still a good person. I just made some mistakes. And it is okay to do those things. And then it can help reinforce the confidence that I have to try and take a chance again. The other thing about esteem is it's very stable. So low self-esteem can last a long time, as well as high self-esteem. So when you hold yourself as valuable, as important, as worthy, as family, as loving, as deserving of respect, that helps you keep your esteem stable in a way that you understand that even in your imperfections, you're still a good person. You're still worthy of love, and you're still worthy of respect. And most importantly, that you still matter even when you make a mistake. Be willing to extend that be willing to extend that olive branch to yourself, that olive branch of forgiveness, and to those in those spaces you may have made those mistakes, right? Todd, I'm laughing. I'm glad you said something this time. You must have just came in right after I was talking bad about you. Because I definitely said, I told Liberty, you probably somewhere watching and not commenting. Okay, I want to try this. So I got this feature. I'm glad y'all on here because I'm side noting again. So I want to see if it works. I'm supposed to be able to do a poll. Hey, Kat, I see you on Instagram. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, I hope you heard me talking about y'all, your show that we might do it this week. Now, oh, that thing don't show. So I'm supposed to be able to put a poll up, and I don't see no poll. Okay, it is showing on the screen, but I don't see how you vote. So try to vote, family. Let me know. Oh, too late. I can't help but break character. I already did it. Listen, I've already broken character for Liberty when she came on because we hadn't seen her in a while. So you know the family missed her. I've been playing beats for her and everything. So we just side note. I done already broke character and Sherry showed up, broke character, broke character. So that's all right. You know, we flow with the energy here too. Okay, so now we can get to that generational curses. I keep looking because I really want to see what the poll looks like, and I don't know what it looks like. What curses did we start on last week, family? Abuse and trauma, physical and emotional, neglect and abandonment. Those are the ones we covered last week. Um, Again, we're going to establish a time frame that we want to think about for our lives is our generation, our cousins. We want to think about the parents, the people who raised us, and then if you had the opportunity to think about the grandparents, right, and how just those three generations are affected by some of those things, right? The thruple. We ain't been a thruple in a while because y'all be mad because I ain't on TikTok like that. Oh, God. Liberty she went to Twitch. So Twitch is good and YouTube is good because they make sure those comments come on the screen. Facebook, I don't know. Hey, Facebook just acting funny. So that's the time frame. We just want to think generations, three generations, ours, our parents, and our grandparents. And the questions we want to make sure that we're thinking about as we're processing some of these possible generational curses is what behaviors or beliefs in my family that actually caused harm within these contexts. Then you want to think about what do I want to do differently for my family or the legacy that I leave behind? And also, what resources would I need to be able to address these things? Because, we don't know all the answers. As a matter of fact, I hope we get to this word. It was this word that when I was doing my research, trying to make sure I give you right information, enmeshment. And in the context of how it was used in the sentence, I totally understood what enmeshment meant, right? But I had never heard that word before, and I've read a ton of books. Never heard enmeshment before, which was amazing within itself. But I never heard enmeshment before. And then when I looked deeper at the meaning of enmeshment, I was like, wow. So we might look it up together. So I hope we get to enmeshment. The next generational curse we want to try to identify for our families is this idea of addiction. And when we think about addiction, we want to think about it in substance abuse, and in this idea of codependency. So, what beliefs or behaviors in my family that caused harm, or in our families that caused harm around this idea of addiction? I know one idea, and it wasn't necessarily in our family, but it was in our culture. A lot of us wound up experiencing it, and I hear it still exists to this day. But this idea, I remember dare, just say no. It really did simplify this idea of addiction to all you got to do is just say no. It never really allowed us to be in a space to be able to address the situations that make people lean to addiction. We never got to look at any of the problems that help you feel like addiction resolves. We just learned to just say no. Or they crack that scrambled egg and this is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And we recognize, I don't know if you necessarily dealt with abuse in your family, substance abuse in your family, but we want to expand that idea because a lot of times when we think about substance abuse, we only think about it as in illegal substances, illicit substances. So drugs and alcohol are definite substances that we can be addicted to. But another substance that many of us deal with in our family has been food. A lot of us had interesting relationships with food that came from the ideas of our families and how we interact with them. I remember this woman I went to college with, and we were in several groups together. And she would talk about something that her family would do. And my family would do it too. And it was one of those situations where when you begin to gain a little weight, your family points it out. And it was very interesting to see how we both received it very differently. One, for her, it was criticizing because that's exactly what it is. And for her, it made the weight, the burden, the criticism created a burden for them in which they turned more to the substance of their choice. And in my family, and it's as I say, it's probably because we have a dynamic of suppressing. So for my family, when you gain a little weight, they talk bad about you too. In intentions that you would monitor your weight. And for most of my family, it has worked. But both of those create a very interesting relationship with that substance called food. Right? And they can be harmful, especially when we start attaching guilt to something that's so natural as eating. You must eat. But how many times have you been made feel guilty for doing something that was so natural? Codependency shows up in a lot of different ways when we think about our generational curses. And the one way that kind of sticks up in my mind is this idea of family is all you got. Blood is thicker than water. All these ideas that are with the intentions of making us value the connection that family has also creates a dynamic where we can be codependent. I've seen people who cannot really function outside of their family. All their friends is their family. Everything they do is their family. It's a level of codependency where they can't even make choices for themselves because of how it may seem to the family. And then you have those people who are so willing are so intent on breaking that dynamic that they'll cut themselves totally off from family because they recognize the codependency can be dangerous. And they recognize that they want to break that, but they don't quite know how. Nor do they quite know the burden that codependency is helping the family carry, right? So what negative ideas come from this codependency? As I said, subconsciously it creates a space where we don't trust people outside our family. Or if we're in a family that didn't create an atmosphere of trust for us, we never really learn how to trust. We never really feel protected if we don't have that experience in that family with codependence. When you're thinking about addiction, you want to also think about what are you going to do differently that your family has not been able to do. One thing that's funny that I've been seeing run into a lot. One person in the family seems like they get more pressure to do better, to be more, to all these things. And I've seen a lot of people bear that burden and they don't understand where it comes from. I think at some space the family recognizes that you will be the person that will break that generational curse. And the only way they know how to support you in that is to put pressure on you to be able to do that. And I add this to you just so you can be able to have another perspective of when that comes. Because they're well intended. Even though the road to hell is paved with good intentions, they're well intended. They really do, whether conscious or subconscious, believe that you will be the one that has the ability to break this familial curse. So they put that pressure on you. So what is something that you would want to do different that'll help address addiction? Addiction is a good response for very emotional people. The blessing that comes with that addiction curse many times is that blessing and that gift of empathy, that gift of understanding. And what makes addiction seem like the choice is one of the things that we're working on our healing path, is coming to terms with who we are and raising our esteem so that we will like ourselves, we will respect ourselves, and we will accept ourselves. So how many times have you had that conflict within you in which you do not feel good about the fact that you are so understanding? How many times have you said, are you worried about the people will take advantage of your understanding or your empathy, your sensitivity? And how many times have you manifested that in your life and bared the burden of that? When you think about your family, think about if that speaks to you, look around at your cousins. Think about the conversations you had or you've overheard. Do your family have conversations about don't be so understanding? Don't let nobody take advantage of you. People tell you don't be so understanding. What harmful things have that done? Unfortunately, it teaches you not to like who you are. That codependency, the inability to be able to let go, comes from that burden of understanding, that burden of empathy, that burden of always being the one. So when thinking about what you want to do differently, how do you want to feel about that? Take a little time and work on liking that about yourself. Respecting and honoring that about yourself. So when those understanding feelings come up, those emotions come up, you accept that about yourself. You understand that about yourself. And you respect that about yourself. What resources do you need to be able to come to terms and learn to like your ability to understand and your ability to be empathetic? What resources do you need to be able to leave a legacy that understands that this burden, the response for this burden, does not need to be addiction or codependency? How will you teach that lesson to those under your tutelage? The next one we want to talk about is poverty and instability, financial instability specifically. When we think about poverty and financial instability, we want to think about it in two contexts. One is financial literacy, and two, generational debt. Generational debt is a cycle of borrowing. So, financial literacy, how does that affect your family? As you were going and you learned about money, how did you learn about money? I can tell you, my family, I have family, to this day, they probably still keep money under the mattress. I cut a hole in the mattress. This is what I learned about money. I learned that you hoard it all and hide it away. You don't trust banks. You don't trust the system. So even as you have this access of money, you don't even take advantage of it with things like investing. Do or does your family invest? What are their ideas and thought on the system that keeps you stuck, your family stuck in survival? Is it the fears staying in the way? What conversations are being had? And how has this fear or this lack of trust within the system keeps your family's financial literacy understanding down? Have you applied so much burden to yourself where you feel as though you have to break this generational curse by solve and understand all things finances for your family, and you pass that pressure down? What gift do you think your family had would be on the other side of financial literacy? I really would think that your family, somewhere in your bloodline, had a history of money and the lack of knowledge of money on how to invest it, how to share it, how to navigate money created somewhat of a downfall. And now your family is living the generations with that lack of understanding, and they don't know where it came from. Or do you have a family who enforces borrowing? You know, it's funny. I think the boomer generation was good for that, especially. They told all their kids, borrow, borrow, borrow. It's okay to take out a loan, you can pay it back, which is why college debt is so high. And the part of that is they didn't have the financial literacy to be able to tell you real advice on taking out these loans. They didn't realize how many of their loans were subsidized in a way that they can afford that no longer exists. There are larger systems at play that help create this gap in information. And to be able to address this, what resources do you need to be able to increase your financial literacy and decrease generational indebtedness? There are plenty of financial courses, and it's more about saving. It's less about just saving. But you actually do have to figure out ways to make your money work for you. And you can do it a little bit at a time. And you taking those small steps, that is leaving a legacy behind of understanding. You will see those around you will begin to take small steps, even if it's only with your children. The lives that you have the most influence over outside of your own. Relationship dysfunction is a huge one for many of us. And in the context of divorce and instability, poor communication and conflict resolution. Listen, the ironic thing about this is sometimes we just minimize individual experiences just as much as we overestimate individual experiences. But one way we minimize individual experiences is this idea of a two-parent household. We assume that being raised in a two-parent household creates a dynamic that is healthy. But that only is true if the people creating the household have taken the steps to be healthy. What type of things, what ideas and understanding did your family teach you about marriage, divorce? You know what's funny? When I think about my own family and the ideas of marriage and divorce, I really did get conflicting messages, right? So which is very funny, and I can think about it for the cousins in my generation, very few of us are married. But most of the people, the generation that raised us was married. And the generation before them were married. And I recognize some of the advice that they gave us, some of the things that they showed us was not conducive to us being able to value marriage. And then they ask us, why aren't you married? What did you see within your family about marriage? I know I saw certain levels of cheating. I seen certain levels of violence, whether it's emotional, physical, mental. Violence was wild in a lot of different ways. But understanding the wild thing about marriage that I learned in my family, the funny thing about it is this is where the conflict Most of the people who got married in my family, they stayed married. They are married to this day. Or, yeah, most of them are married in the other generation. They got married, they still married. Then it's those that didn't get married. So I got that marriage is a covenant. That once you make that decision, you in it. But then I also learned that you don't have to accept anything. And you can divorce. My immediate parents, my pops was divorced 3 times, my mom's 4 times. So I also learned that something like marriage is expendable. It's not that valuable. Do your ideas and thoughts on divorce and relationship include how it affects the children? Children being raised in this dynamic, children experiencing that dynamic. Have you had a lot of relationships? If you're being honest with yourself, have you been a serial dater? And what ideas did you learn about the opposite sex that could be harmful, that manifest in your dating now? How trustworthy were you told that the opposite sex was? Were you told that men are trustworthy? Were you told that women are trustworthy? Were you told that marriage is a good thing, something that you want? Or, with the good intentions of your family, were they telling you the hazards to avoid, but not preparing you for the things that you will need to achieve success? The tools of failure or the tools of success? Which were you given? Do those tools have you in a space now where you're okay if certain things don't happen? How do you view the family unit? Is it important to have both parents? What standards do you have? Did your family teach you that it was okay to have children out of wedlock? Most of my family started having children at 18. They barely made it out of high school. Barely. Some of them got pregnant in high school. That was the norm of my family. And one thing I know about getting pregnant in high school, you don't see the value of having a family unit because you're still a child. So how does that translate into my views of dating when most of my family were people who were children having children? I know for me personally, it created a burden where I knew I was willing to do anything to not have children like that. And that means good and bad, right and wrong, those areas of gray. What do you want to do different as it relates to divorce and unstable relationships. What resources do you need to be able to stabilize your relationships that you have and maintain a marriage if that's what you want for yourself? One of the things that help relationship dysfunction is poor communication and conflict resolution. I promise you, families teach that's one of the first lessons you learn. And it's funny because I hear all different types of dynamics. One of the interesting dynamics that I hear is about fathers. And we read this book on Thursday. It is makes me want to holler. And this idea shows up in that book because the main character is very intent on not being like his wife's father. And his wife's father, as he is described in that book, as one of those people who what's important to him has become secondary to the family. So his silence is seen as agreeing when it really is not. It really exhibits the poor communication dynamics. And as I've been talking with people from that book was one thing. As I've been talking to people and as they talk about their father, they talk about how little their father says. And we always look at this like it's some sign of strength, sign of power, that he says so little that when he finally says something, it's so powerful. And I think sometimes we don't recognize is because he doesn't say that much is because it's not valued until you feel it's powerful. How many times have we talked about our mothers like this? That the things that exhibit poor communication, the inability to state your feelings in a space and feel safe, that we have perverted so much that we see it as signs of strength. Silence is a form of poor communication. We always think about the yelling. And it was funny because outside of my house, I experienced a lot of yelling. Inside of my house, I ain't experienced that much yelling, but the communication was just as poor. As you think about your life growing up as a child, could you talk to your parents about any and everything without them being so triggered that they cannot hear you anymore? Have you been in a space? Perfect example. I was homeless in college. I live on that. That's a perfect part of my life. And my family had no idea. They had no idea because I had already been in a system that we really don't talk about what's really going on. So are there ways that your family has highlighted poor communication that we thought are strengths? How do we handle conflict? I bear witness to, in a lot of families, the way that conflict is resolved is by the removing of love and emotion. And now it's even worse because we have justified that emotional abuse and guised it in a way that we said it's for the sake of keeping peace. But our idea of peace has been perversed. Well, now, peace is also emotionally manipulative. K order S. Okay, we over our hour, family. Uh, uh, Sherry, I'm reading what you said right now, and a lot of parents' communication wasn't good. And the thing about that is, it's something that I see happens with parents again. They don't always acknowledge that. They really do think the way they said is the right way. And I am so thankful that I've had the opportunity to lead people because I've learned that what I think is clear is not clear. English is a terrible language. It can mean the same thing you say can be. I know that's right. Okay. Something you said made me laugh. And you talked about your family. You said I used to hate to say anything. I did too. And one of the reasons why I hated to say anything is because I recognized young that the adults around me had no control over their emotions. And because they had so very little control over their emotions, the way that they figured out how to handle the emotions was to box themselves into only like three emotions. So the older generation a lot of time only showed us sadness, anger, and joy will show up like holidays. Occasionally, you can be happy, but even if you got too happy about something, it can be seen as bad. So many of us went through that space where we dealt with a lot of feelings that we couldn't communicate. And now we're adults and we still have some of that poor communication. And we think that because we're saying the words, if we even got to a space where we can say the words, because again, you remember we said many of us think that opting out of our life is the best answer. I just ain't gonna say nothing. And I don't mean ghosting, because I believe in ghosting. Ghosting definitely does have a place. But that's just not communicating your true feelings, period. We've been socialized or trained in a way that we don't say much, which is how earlier I talked about that experience with shame, which is how people can see me and don't know. Because even I, in this process, has to recognize that I've built walls that I'm tearing down. That's why we do it together, family. I'm not sitting here as I am a perfect person or I have all the answers. I'm sitting here as a person just like you, trying to heal, trying to be the best version of ourselves. And we do it together. We find resources. We look up things. We do everything. We have discussions. And poor communication was a big one for our families. I know for my family, the way poor communication was, do what I say. I was talking to parents lately. I've been talking to parents lately. And around this idea of their kids are not listening. And I know they heard me and I know they understand. But what they really saying is do what I say. They have this idea of you got to do what I say. I was on the phone with somebody arguing with their child because their child didn't do what they said. Now, what their child is doing is not out of alignment for what kids do. So we're not even talking about disrespect. We're not even talking about established rules being broken. We're talking about something as simple as, I told you take that glass to the kitchen. We have conditioned ourselves to poorly communicate. And I know for myself, especially when you're intelligent, you're good at solving answers, poor communication can be second nature because you won't understand why people won't do what you said. Do what I said. And in our family, what you learn is if you don't do what they said, it might result in literal physical violence. How we always minimize the role that whooping plays in our families and all the lessons that it teach. Because we always talk about the intended lessons, which it doesn't always teach, but we gloss over the unintended lessons. And in whipping your children, you essentially teach them that you don't got to talk it out. It's poor communication. You don't do what I say, you get whooped. That's it. And you expect them to go out in this world and be able to receive direction, give direction, navigate this idea of direction, and you wonder why they struggle. We don't even create a space within the home that allows them to understand that it's really not do what I say. You do got a choice. You do have options. You do have your own mind. So poor communication has been interesting within our families. And what do you want to do different? How are you communicating differently? Are you creating that safe space for your children to be able to confide in you? I remember, I don't have kids, but I'll never forget, I've worked with children. And if you work with children, especially when you get to, I'll say 5th grade and above, middle school for sure, children have questions that as adults, we're not always ready to answer. And I remember I was working for this after school program. And it was this young woman, she was probably she was in the 9th grade. Honestly, she was in the 9th grade. And her dress was kind of tomboyish. And because of this, she got a lot of slack about it. A lot of slack about it. And you know what kind of slack she got. It was slack about her sexuality. And she heard it so much from her family, that poor communication, poor conflict resolution, that she was unsure on if it was true for her. People were labeling her. They were speaking that into her life, and she had no idea. She was still a kid. So one day she comes to me and she says, "Mr. Anthony, I have a question for you." And I am, I'm 23 years old, and I don't know. And every day I prayed that when I go work with these kids, I don't make things worse. So she comes to me and she says, "Mr. Anthony, I have a question for you." And she says, "Mr. Anthony, I don't know if I am gay or not." And me still being too young to really be able to help her through this, I don't know anything about navigating questions like this. I just know I'm like, oh my God. How am I supposed to answer this question? Oh my God, I'm a kid trying to tell a kid what their sexuality is supposed to be. Oh my God. And on the inside, I'm panicking. And ultimately, I give her some BS, really. It ain't BS, it was good. I really wound up just telling her that, you make the decision for yourself. You don't got to decide now. You got time, this your life. Sounded good. But the reason why I told that story is to talk about when she asked the question, the emotions that arose inside of me. Because so many parents deal with this. Your kid come to you with that right question that you don't think that they should be asking. You're not ready to answer. It reminds you of something you did. And now we respond to our children with our feelings. And we remember what our feelings are, right? Feelings are the stories that we tell ourselves. So now we start telling ourselves these wild stories because we are imaginative and creative beings. But we don't recognize that our imagination helps shapes our feelings. If you are an imaginative, creative being, you are creating all types of stories in your head. So again, when you reach that space and those feelings, those emotions start arising and you start creating those feelings, how differently are you going to address this when it comes to your legacy? Not just the children that you have, but the children you interact with, the adults you interact with. This is your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, the strangers on the street. How do you navigate that when they ask you a question that arises all these emotions? What resources will you need? A good resource is something that allows you to be able to label your emotions. We haven't dealt with our emotions for so long that we don't even know the name of them anymore. So when it shows up, we deny that that's what it is. But by the simple fact of us denying that that's what we feel, lets us know that's exactly what we feel. Because why of all words would you say, I ain't gonna feel ashamed? You should. Right. K order S 8:30. We went over a little bit, family. Do do do. I'll stop there. I think we did good. Um, Next week we'll pick up again. We'll start talking about mental health, as far as disorders and stigmas, and how that is viewed within our family. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a real story that kind of how we dealt with mental health issues in our family. I'll never forget. I think my aunt was sick. This is I got stories. My aunt was sick or whatever, and the family started getting together. And I remember is me, a couple cousins in the living room, and my uncle, wild boy. He is the uncle that used to look at me and be like, "Man, you still working? You supposed to get you a woman to take care of you." So he's been a wild boy for a long time. But we got on the conversation of the women in our family. And this makes sense for us as men to be able to have this conversation, because my family is very matriarchal. So women do run the family. And in that dynamic, the thoughts of men, the thoughts of males, the thoughts of masculinity can be perversed, which makes sense on why my uncle would say something like that. Because thoughts of masculinity have been perverse. And now it's the position of where in this matriarchal family, these women have ideas of what man and masculinity is. But they don't know if it's true. Right? So in this position, we sitting around and we having this conversation, and my cousin says so boldly, right? Something that I kind of thought, but I ain't say out loud because I think this is about all my family. He says, the women in my family, our family, crazy. And my uncle goes off. He like, you not gonna be talking about my sisters. You not gonna be talking about the women in my family. You not gonna be talking about all this stuff. And on the surface, it looks good because it's this idea of protection. So if somebody disrespects the woman in our family, the men in our family will protect them. But the downside about that is it doesn't always create a space where we can have genuine conversations. And although the women in our families aren't crazy, there was something that my cousin was trying to say that he necessarily didn't have the verbiage to. And because of in that moment, it created emotions in my uncle. We couldn't even have the space to really talk about mental health issues. Because what my cousin was really saying is, we got some mental health issues in this family. And one thing I can say for sure, none of my family members outside of my generation, and if they send the kids, the older generation, therapy was not part of their process. So there are a lot of stigmas within our families as it relates to mental health. So sorry about that side note. We'll start on next week with mental health. We got some educational barriers, limiting beliefs, and cultural norms. We got a bunch. I got a bunch of these. We're gonna be on this for a while. Hopefully, I can see you Thursday. Thursday we are on book club again, so we will continue reading "Makes Me Wanna Holler" by Nathan McCall. And I need to check to see because I feel like we're getting close to the end of that book. If you can't make it Thursday, I hope to see you here again on Tuesday for another episode of Soul Swami Live. I appreciate the time you shared. I appreciate you stopping through. You know, it's many thanks. And I hope you have a great week, family. Peace.